Well, hello and welcome to another video by Financial Earning. On today's video, I'm going to do something a little bit different than I usually do. I'm going to be talking about Mullen Automotive's share price. I'm going to be talking about the stock, that is $MULN. I typically cover the fundamentals of the company, the PR announcements, any of the DD I can find online. But for today's video, I really wanted to talk a little bit about the charts, and that's because I was surprised to not see Mullen's share price reflecting the PR. So I did a little bit of digging and I'd like to share that with you all. This is not financial advice. This is just my opinion for entertainment purposes only. Hopefully it's a little bit educational, but let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, on this first graph, we're going to go through a couple technicals. First one I want to point out is going to be that red outline and then that yellowish line. That is the short interest percentage of the free float. The red outline is the amount of uncertainty. Again, this is Ortex data, but there is a reported amount of short interest that comes out about twice a month. But just wanted to kind of share with you what it looks like we're seeing in terms of the amount of shares that are being shorted. And if you were looking at Ortex data over the past couple of days, you would see that they've been increasing the number of shares and keeping those. So they haven't been exchanging them 50-50. They've actually had a steady increase, and you can actually see that reflected in the short interest percentage. And you'll see that just over the past 4 trading days, all 4 of those candles have been red. Even with good PR, we had Pritchard Automotive Company. They actually came on board as one of Mullen's dealers now. They have a partnership in California that can deal with customers, and they're able to get that HVIP voucher using this specific dealer. So there was a lot of really good information, and then they actually showed a picture of one of the Mullen Class 1 vans being wrapped, showing another one of the vocations that is looking at utilizing these vehicles. And this is a company that works with Pritchard EV, and that is AAA, as well as this MRSS. So I want to just go over a couple of the other technicals here. You're going to see that according to the live interest data, this is as of Friday, you can see that has short interest at 36.48% of the float. And then you're going to see the total number of shares being shorted. Again, this is the estimate at 2.31 million shares. So out of the last reported float of about 6.6 million, 2.31 of the float is actually being shorted right now. So that's a little over a third of the float. That is pretty incredible. And the next thing I want to show you is the days to cover. So you can see that as the short interest has increased over this past week, the days to cover has been going down. So you've seen a lot of other information in terms of TTM squeeze and a few other technicals. I'm not going to necessarily talk about squeeze. I just want to show you what price action was historically and potentially where it could be. Again, this is educational purpose only. But let's go ahead and look a little bit more. So if you look at the candles over this past year to date, you're going to actually notice that as the shorts return shares by the short interest going down, by the time they finish that, you'd see a small run up on the share price. So if you looked, let's see, back around mid to late January, you see the short interest was around that 36%, and then it dropped all the way down to about 16% or so. And then you'll see about January 29th, you'll see that large green candle. In my opinion, again, this could be due to the amount of shorts that were covering and buying their shares and closing those out. That did obviously help in terms of increasing the share price for that specific trading day. And then you can see again, if you look at, it looks like about March, maybe 20th or 21st or so, you could see that short interest was around maybe 20%, 19% or so, and it got taken down to about 13%. So just that small percentage drop, you'll notice around March 20th or 29th, you'll see that large green candle again on the daily. So what we do see is a large green candle on that Monday, and that was Mullen's PR about the HVIP voucher program and the CARB in California. Actually, now those Class 3 vehicles are able to be sold for less than $17,000 a piece. That had the market pretty excited, in my opinion. But shorts decided instead of covering and getting out, they would double down. So that short interest actually increased significantly. So as I mentioned, we're at 36.48%. Let's talk about some of the historicals on this next slide. All right, I'm going to take you all on a trip back to the future. This is actually going to be back in December of 2022. Again, I'm having some of the same technicals up here. You can see the red, that is again the short interest of the float by percentage. You're going to see the candles, which would be the price, and you're going to see the days to cover. That's that blue line. What I wanted to show you was there was PR put out on December 15th, 2022. This had to do with Mullen receiving a purchase order from Randy Marion for about 6,000 of the Class 1 EV cargo vans. And then a couple days later, well, you'll actually see from the date of the PR, the short percent was around, let's see, 13.5% or so. It increased on December 16th to about 15%. So it had a small percentage increase. Nothing like we're seeing this past week, but it did have an increase. And you'll see that when they decided to cover, when that short interest percentage went down, it went from around 13.6 or so all the way down to about 11%. You'll see that covering. What happened? After that time, you'll see those candles starting to go green. Again, I believe this has to do with shorts covering and purchasing the shares to be able to close out those short positions. So that was a nice run up that they had back then. I'm actually going to show a few other technicals with this same setup on this next slide, but just kind of wanted to show you, the overlay on this one. This is that same 2022 chart, but this time what I have is if you look at the top left, you're going to see the 13 EMA and you're going to see the 48 EMA. If any of you have done any Googling, if you've done some research on some of the technical analysis, you'll know that anytime that the 13 EMA crosses above the 48 EMA, that is a bullish signal. And it's typically a little bit lagging. So you'll actually start to see some of the price action occurring prior to the crossing. So I just want to point that out. This again is a daily chart. And again, as we're looking at those green candles, if you look at that bottom blue line, that is the 13 EMA. And then you look at that teal line, that is that 48 EMA. It crosses about January 4th. But if you look starting on December 29th, 2022, that's when the price started to run up. And you'll see I have a box around the specific days of this run up. And this actually had about 119%, almost 120% of an increase in share price over the course of those 6 bars or 6 trading days. So that was, in essence, in my opinion, between Mullen's PR and the fact that shorts decided to return shares a few days or a week or so afterwards. That, in my opinion, was a part of the outcome. Again, this is just one of the many technicals that you can be looking at as a trader, but this is just something that I found interesting. As I said, I did a deep dive into a lot of the charts and technicals and just wanted to kind of understand why the price action wasn't matching. We do know that there are no significant amount of warrants left as far as being exercised. Mullen did put out an 8K and talked about those. It was somewhere between 70 and 80,000 back in January. So again, there should be really nothing, in my opinion, in terms of slowing down or suppressing these technicals. So let's fast forward again to this past week of trading. I have the same type of setup that I had on that first slide. You can see the red outline and the yellow line. That is the short interest percent of the free float. You're going to see that blue line, which is the days to cover. And you're going to see the candlesticks, which of course is going to be the share price. So as I mentioned, Mullen did have the PR out about the HVIP dealer coming online on April 29th. That was an exciting day in the market. You can see that in terms of the green candle, it went from about 360 all the way up to over 6, about 625, and that's how the trading day ended. The bell rang, closing bell, but then during after hours, the run continued to about 774, if I'm not mistaken. So it was an exciting day if you're holding Mullen, if you're long on Mullen investing. It was a pretty exciting stuff. Just to disclose, I am still an investor in Mullen, And I was very excited to see that, but I still believe, based off of Mullen's fundamentals, that there's still more to come in terms of this company and their value. So I held, and I have continued to do so. And if you look after that PR came out, after that candle, with that exciting news, you would think you would see either a small amount of retrace or potentially a little bit of additional carry on. But you can see we had 4 red candles for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I started to scratch my head because during that 4-day period, there was 2 significant Mullen PRs as well. One was the Pritchard EV company coming on as another dealer for Mullen. They actually have a partnership with a company in California, Tom's Trucks, so they're able to get that HVIP voucher deal going to be able to sell those Class 3 trucks for under $17,000. But outside of that, there was another PR that was put out about some of Pritchard EV's companies, some of their customers, what those vocations look like. They have some mobile security companies and some kind of mobile servicing companies. So companies like AAA would be very interested in these small vehicles. They used to have a lot of Ford Transit Connects. Those vehicles are no longer being manufactured. From a Class 1 standpoint, you have to get the larger Ford Transits if you're interested. So that leaves this market open, as I've said in previous videos, for this Mullen Class 1 van, this cargo van. So anyways, getting back to this chart, what you do see is that the short interest percentage had a steady increase after that large green candle, and that actually aligns with the red candles coming back down. You'll see the short interest percent went from about 22%, on that Monday, all the way to about 33 or 34% on Thursday. Fridays hasn't actually hit this chart, but they do have a live interest. That live interest is about 36.48%. I did share that on one of the first graphs, but just wanted to remind you all. So that is still steadily increasing. And again, that actually correlates with what we saw with Friday's price action. So in my opinion, the reason why you saw such a significant downward pressure, besides some potential people taking profits, would be because of the short interest going up. The number of shares now being held in short position is 2.3 million, which is a significant amount. It's over a third of the float, as I mentioned before. But just want to show you this. And if you look at the days to cover, you're going to see this as well. It actually went a little under 1 day to cover. Again, this was on that Monday and Tuesday. And then since then, it's slightly went up, but it's still only around a 1.1 days to cover or so. Depending on which data point you're looking at, you may have a slightly different amount of days to cover. And then again, the Friday has some of that live interest data. So you can see that, if there is a short position being held, there is going to be a request for those shares if they are not still in the money in terms of short position and they don't have enough margin to be covering what they're holding. So again, just based off of historicals, I believe that there could be a slight increase in the price of the stock as shorts begin returning. All right, again, on this chart, what you're looking at is the teal line, that is the 48 EMA, and then you're looking at the blue line, that is your 13 EMA. Again, anytime the 13 EMA gets above the 48 EMA, that's considered a golden cross. That is a bullish signal, and the price action typically starts prior to those two technicals intersecting. So again, you can actually see that 13 EMA is starting to increase and is getting closer to that 48. Again, I believe that if shorts begin to cover their positions, that is going to give that 13 EMA even more strength, and you will start to see that go over. So if you look at price action so far, what we know from the Thursday price point, you're going to see it was around $3 or so. You'll see that going all the way until Tuesday, it actually hit $7 and around 46 cents, and that was during the trading hours. We're not including some of the extended hours there. So just within those trading days, it was about 144% run. That is a larger run than what was seen back in 2022. So just keep that in mind, and then note that there is a significant amount of short interest percent still, and the number of shares still being shorted. So if those shares are covered in the near future, again, you will see an additional increase in share price because those will have to be buy orders when it's covered. So let's look at potentially what that may look like. And this is actually just a potential forecast, not sure exactly where the price could be, but this is a potential projection. This is using the same about 119% run up that we saw back in 2022. Again, I'm starting the run up over again based off of Friday's bar, and that is merely because we know that the short interest percent is still at its highest and the number of shares is still at its highest. We did see a slight number of shares coming back into the market, but we did see the cost of borrow going up. I'll share that on the next slide, but potentially looking at this projection with the same percent increase, you could potentially see Mullen's price in the $9 range, and this is still short term by mid-May. So again, this is just a potential forecast. This is for educational purposes only. This is not financial advice. This is just me trying to read some charts with you all and just give you my opinion on what I am seeing unfold. And as I mentioned, cost to borrow, I wanted to show you. So the latest cost to borrow information we have is actually from today, Saturday, and it shows that there's still 65,000 shares available, but the cost to borrow fee is around 170%. There are various brokers. This is the interactive brokers that I'm using. Different brokers will have different amounts of cost to borrow, but I can tell you that the shares have been hard to borrow the last few days. If you look at the gray bars underneath of what looks like a candle chart, that is going to be the number of available shares for each of those days. So you can see on May 1st and on May 2nd, on April 29th, and you can see on May 1st, the number of shares available were very low, and in some instances they actually hit zero many times. And I did hear from some people that are bearish on the company that are still trying to short the company, which I'm scratching my head on. They were having a difficult time finding shares. I did hear some other people saying that they could still do it with their brokerage apps, but I do believe that they are hard to borrow right now. Another thing I want to show you is that red and green bar. That is not the price. What that is that is the percent of cost to borrow. So you can see that cost to borrow was hovering somewhere a little bit above 80% pretty much for this past year. But what was pretty amazing is you can see just in these last 2 days, after that nice run up that we had, a few days later, you'd see that it increased, it shot up and doubled all the way up to about 170%. So that's a significant cost to borrow. I got a table down at the left so you can just see, each of the, as those number of shares changed and as that percent of cost to borrow changed as well. Wanted to go ahead and share that with you all. So again, in my opinion, with the short interest the way it is, with the amount of PR that we've been getting, and with this cost to borrow being significantly high, these individuals that are still holding their shares from a total group, just looking at that 2.3 million with this 170% cost to borrow rate, again, and single individuals not holding that many shares, but overall, that is starting to erode away at any potential gains. And then you have to realize that a lot of people that do short different stock, they like to close their position at the end of the day and avoid having to carry on that cost to borrow. Because that will actually erode away any potential gains they would have had. But because of the significant run up, we were in the mid $2. We ran all the way up to $7 at a very rapid amount of time. I have a feeling that there are some individuals that have been holding because they are not in the profit on those short positions. So this percentage is weighing on them. So if these individuals decide to close out, and they are the first few to close out, they are going to get closed out at a minimal loss amount versus the individuals that continue to hold because the closing out will increase the buying pressure. And if Mullen has any more PR coming out, and we know that they have their two-seaters that are supposed to be hitting this summer, we know that the HVIP program is going on. We know Pritchard EV is one of the dealers. If Mullen delivers some of the vehicles that we see on their lot over to Pritchard EV, and has any of transactions in terms of sales, all of those different things could be very bullish for the company. It could bring in a lot of trading volume, which could increase the buying pressure again, which could make the closing of these borrowed shares, a little bit more pressure gets put on them. So I just wanted to share this all with you. Again, this is just my thoughts based off what I'm seeing. All right, so I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Like I said, it's a little different than what I'm used to doing, but just like I like to do DD on the company and look into the fundamentals, I thought it'd be interesting just to look at the stock and do some charting DD of my own. So again, these are just some of the technicals. There are many different ways to read the different stocks that are out there. This is just something that I found to be interesting, just looking at some of the previous information and looking at what's going on right now, with the company's stock and with the company's fundamentals. Again, if you like this video, please consider giving it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think about Mullen's share price for this upcoming week? What do you think about the different PRs that they've been releasing? Give me some comments on other ideas for content. And again, I do not work for Mullen Automotive. I am not a paid representative, a consultant, or anything of that nature. I receive no compensation. I am just a mere investor who is overly enthusiastic about the company. This is not financial advice at all. And I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys on the next one.